For our next lesson, we're going to talk about metric versus standard when it comes to measurement. We're going to look at metric versus standard in three different categories. We're going to look at temperature, length, and volume. First, we'll start by talking about temperature. The two types that we measure temperature in is degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius. Which one of these makes more sense? To us, degrees Fahrenheit makes more sense because that's what we use every day. What if I were to say it's 25 degrees outside? Does that mean it's winter or summer? Well, that all depends on whether it's degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to look at these two different models and you'll be able to decide which one makes more sense. Next, we're going to look at length. Length is probably one of the easiest ones to relate to. When we talk about how tall we are, we describe ourselves in feet. However, not everyone across the world uses feet to measure things. Other countries measure themselves using meters. What are meters? Do you know what a meter is? How does it relate to a yard? Do you know what a yard is? And if you know what both of these are, which one's longer? Is it harder to run a 100-meter dash? We're going to talk about things like measuring great distances. If I were to travel from one city to another, say from here to the other side of the world like Hong Kong, what would I use to measure that? Would I measure in feet? Would I measure in yards? Or is there something else that I would use? Next, we're going to look at volume. What's more, a gallon or a liter? Let's take a look at some examples around us. Here we have a half gallon. Here this is measured in ounces. Ounces again. And again ounces. Here we have a gallon. But wait a minute. Now all of a sudden we're using liters. Why did we all of a sudden decide to start measuring in liters? Why don't we use liters in everything else? We're going to ask these questions later on as we discover standard versus metric even more. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back and finish our introduction. Before we go any further, I'd like you guys to think about measurement by thinking about maybe how you've interacted with a measurement today, or maybe come across a measurement. If you had something for breakfast, was there a measurement involved there? When you came to school today, was there a measurement involved? Once we finish this introduction, then we can begin answering the other questions we had about measurement.